What is up, guys? My name is Ben Hartwell. Thanks for checking out my channel. If it's your first time here, please consider subscribing. So some of you may be thinking, didn't he already do this video once? Yeah, I did. But I'm going to redo it for two reasons. I was listening to the tone that I made in the first video whilst I was playing it live a few days ago. I was thinking, this tone's close, but I think I can get it closer. And number two, a lot of you guys have been asking if I'll make these tones available, so I'm going to put them on my website and there'll be more information on that at the end of the video. So, the Sweet Child of Mine tone, probably the most iconic, well-known intro in the whole of rock music. There's an awesome rig rundown you can watch with Slash's tech, where he runs through Slash's entire rig end to end. And these days when he's playing live with G&R, he uses signature amps, signature guitars, signature pedals, but back in the day, all he had was his Chris Derrick Les Paul copy and his Marshall amplifier. Now there's a lot of speculation over the Marshall that was used during the Appetite era. We know it was a rental amp, but nobody can seem to agree exactly on what Marshall it was. So originally this was a tone that I built for using live with my FR setup, but since listening to it more and more, I've realised that the tone that I originally built, although close, could be better. So I've taken it into Helix Native, and with my reference headphones and my Genelecs, I think I've got it a lot closer. Anyway, that's enough talking, let's jump straight into it and I'll show you how I built the tone. Okay, so I've got my Les Paul, I'm plugged straight into the front of the arrow, and I've got Helix Native loaded up. Now the way a lot of people think that you make a Slash tone is that you just load up a JCM 800 style amp, crank it up, max out your volume, roll off some tone, and that'll give you the sound. That doesn't sound too Slash to me. So let me show you the way that I built my Sweet Child of Mine tone. There's a lot of information on the internet, but nobody can really seem to agree on the amp that was actually used to record Sweet Child of Mine. We know that there was two amps used during the Appetite recordings, one of which was a JCM 800, and the other one is a rental amp that was rented from SIR, but nobody's totally sure on what it was. The general consensus of opinion is that it was a Marshall Super Trem. Now there is a model of that built into the Helix, but because it was so heavily modded and had so much more gain than a standard model, that didn't really do it for me when I loaded it up. So the amp that I ended up going for was the JCM 800, which in the Helix is the 2204. Now with this tone and the majority of tones that I make, I use third-party IRs, and I use my favourite IR maker, which is 3 Sigma Audio. And the impulse responses that I use are a model of a Marshall 1960 A-cab with T75 speakers and a Marshall 2251 with vintage 30s. So that any tweaking, we've got this. So we're kind of getting into the ballpark of the tone, but we're nowhere near yet, so I'm going to tweak the amp. So with a bit of amp tweaking, we've got this. So it's not really changed the tone too much, it's just more the response of what that amp is doing. So the next step is I'm going to dial in those IRs. So I've removed some of the low end from the V30 IR, because I don't really need much of that bottom end. Cut some of the top out of the other IR, and just created a nice mix between the two. So far, we've got this. Okay, so for a bass tone, that's kind of getting there now. The next step is probably the most important thing to getting this tone right, and that's the delay and the reverb. So the delay that I used was the tape delay, and the reverb is the hall delay, which is running in stereo to give us that wide effect. Sounding pretty good. And now I'm going to add the absolute secret to this patch. If you listen to the record, it's quite an interesting open sound to the guitar part and a real big mid push in there. So the way that I'm going to achieve that is I'm going to stick a half cock wah pedal straight into the front of the amp to really help push that amp and give me that mid bump. So with that wah pedal added, So hopefully there you can hear it's adding that kind of open vocal quality and really help pushing those mids, just like the record. Now also listen to the record, it seems like there might be another delay pedal in front of the amp with a low mix and a low feedback, just pushing the front of that amp a little bit and getting that distorted repeat. No Slash is a fan of doing that. You can hear it on things like the intro to Welcome to the Jungle. So I'm going to add it here, just really low in the mix. So the delay I ended up using was the Elephant Man delay with a really low mix and quite low feedback. And it sounds like this. Take it out. Doesn't make a huge difference, it's just there, just helping push that amp a little bit. So the tone's almost there. The last couple of steps are just to add some EQ blocks, just to really shape the tone. I'm going to add a 10-band graphic and a simple EQ, and I'm really going to refine the tone to get it as close to the record as I can. So I've ended up pulling out quite a lot of frequencies, mostly in the mid-range, but also dialed back some of the low end because we don't need it. And I've boosted the top end to try and give it the high sizzle that there is on the record. So with the EQs dialed in, I've got this. That's sounding pretty close. So there's just a couple more things to add. There's a wah to add right at the front of the chain for the solo. I ended up going with the throaty wah because it has quite a nice vocal quality to it. And you can blend the high and low range to match the Slash wah. What I did find out to do though was to pull back that mix slightly, and also on the Helix floorboard restrict how far the treadle is allowed to go to about 75%, because once it gets past there, the high end just becomes too harsh. Around that 70-75% seemed to get me the tone that I was after. I can't show you what that sounds like because I don't have the Helix board plugged in at the moment. And then the last two things to add are two EQ blocks right at the end of the chain. I'm using the simple EQ for both. The first one is going to be a boost for the solos, adding a boost of around 3 dB. And the last one I'm going to use as a brightness control. Depending on the equipment that you end up running Helix through, patches can vary quite drastically in how bright or how dark they sound. So I'm putting an EQ right at the end of the patch, just in case I need to dial in that brightness, add a little bit more low end or take out some of the top or whatever I might need to do. You could use the global EQ that's on the Helix, but I like to have it on a patch per patch basis so that I can just dial it in just as and when I need to. So that's it, that's the entire patch for Sweet Child of Mine built in the Line 6 Helix. One of the great things about the way this patch is built and using really high quality IRs is that all you have to do to get the verse parts is to roll down the volume on the guitar. And that pseudo clean is there. Roll the volume back up and we're straight back to full out tone. One more thing I will mention with this tone is it seems to be really important the way you actually pick the notes. The closer you get to a more flat picking angle, the more pronounced that mid-range seems to become. So you really need to find a comfortable area between picking completely flat and picking at an angle where that mid-range is popping out just like the record. If you pick it completely flat, you can really hear how pronounced the mid-range is there. If I pick how I would normally at an angle, you don't really get all that mid-range. So it's about finding the balance. So there you go, the Sweet Child of Mine tone, built with the Line 6 Helix. Not really that complicated a tone, it's just about dialing in the right amp, getting some good quality IRs, getting the delay and the reverb sitting well with that amp, and then my secret to the tone, sticking a half-cut wah pedal right into the front of that amp to give us that big mid push. As I said at the beginning of the video, people have been asking if I'll make these tones available, so they are available on my website. You can go to benhartwellguitar.co.uk. and each time I make a new tone, I'm going to be putting it up on there. If you decide to download one of these tones, you get two versions, one based on the tone that I made in the video with the IRs, and one with stock speakers. Obviously I can't give away the IRs, and you will need to purchase them separately from 3 Sigma Audio. I'll put links in the description below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up below. If you want to see another video on my channel, you can click right up here. And don't forget to subscribe, you can do it just there. See you in the next one.